today. Happy Wednesday. And today you are listening to Rocket Fuel Expert Spotlight. For those of you that are not aware of what Rocket Fuel is about, my name is Wanda Toro Tarini. I am the founder of the Rocket Fuel community here on Facebook. And what we do is we unite experts, entrepreneurs who are experts in their field, who recognize two major things are Rocket Fuel in their business. One, that actually using the power of other experts is Rocket Fuel. And two, that visibility is Rocket Fuel, right? And so my mission here is to be able to highlight all of our as many of our wonderful members as we possibly can to show the world why they are hashtag Rocket Fuel for people's businesses or for people's lives. So today I have a yummy topic to talk about with my darling and super expert, like long-term entrepreneur, Nettie Owens, president of Sapari Solutions, founder of the Momentum Program, yada, 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 yada. Let's do a round of applause. Whee!
I'll give one for me and for you. This is so fun. I'm so excited to be here. And apologies for looking down. I wanted to make sure that I shared all that we're doing with everybody else on the web.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very, very much. Now, I will disclose, guys, two things. Nettie is one of my personal secret weapons. Just saying. She was secret. Now she's not secret anymore.
I'm no secret.
No, she is really an advisor coach that has been in my life for several years now. And you're going to learn why. So I'll just keep it at that, right? Because I could just go on and on and on. So that's one
we
reveal.
Gotta give them something to look forward to.
I know.
Stay with us. You'll learn more.
Actually, the other reveal, I'll leave for later. Anyway.
Okay, now I want to know. Do I know?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, good. All right, that's good.
And I'm choking on my own show. Okay. But today we have a really cool topic because Nettie is an expert on working with high achiever type people who have chosen this life, this desire of being an entrepreneur, and didn't realize that, that there are some issues, there are some challenges associated with that, because we don't like to think of challenges. We could always overcome anything, right?
Yes, absolutely. Oh my gosh. Just as you were saying that, I was thinking about how strange it is for high achievers who tend to be a little bit perfectionist to go into something like entrepreneurship where there are no rules, there's no boundaries, there's no structure to follow, right? So it's a very interesting dynamic for high achievers in business.
And the tough part is that you go through life, you're in your pre-entrepreneurial world, right? These folks typically, I don't know.
You're talking about you and me, right?
I know.
Us, we, yeah.
Those peeps, right? Us, right?
High achievers. Oh my gosh.
No, but what happens is it's tough. And I faced this where, sure, whatever I did, it could be if I was a busgirl at a restaurant, literally from the first job that I ever had, I always sought to be the best version of that. And my father would always tell me, and my mom too, no matter what you do, you want to be the best version of that possible, right?
Yes.
So you're used to always getting employee of the month and this, award and that award and whatever.
Valedictorian, right? You were top of your class. You went to the best school. You went to the school where you're like, oh my gosh, everybody here with me is also the top of their class. And suddenly, but you still made it out on top. You get that great job. You climb that ladder quickly. It's just checking the boxes of success.
Yeah. And not
one after another.
But not that it's easy, right? But so, guys, if this is speaking to you at all, please leave a comment, say hallelujah, amen, whatever, raise your hand, right? If
I'll
you're
take
just
an
like,
amen.
shit, this is me, right? Like, let's talk about, this is really important to kind of like hash out who it is that you're talking about, because there's a unique psychology that and perspective that we experience, and that is the foundational like understanding that we all need to kind of start off with, and then off comes like the beauty that is what Nettie has revealed. So describe more to me this person, us,
Right.
the
Us.
peeps that
Describe us
you,
to each other. Yeah.
yeah, the peeps that you specifically serve right now.
Right. I mean, so even now, those folks, we are still relatively successful in our businesses. And we aim high. Like, we aim for big goals. We aim for big goals quickly. We tend to have, on one hand, pretty good confidence, because we know we're expert at what we know. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
We
yeah.
know we're experts at what we know.
We know our shit. Okay.
We know our shit. We often are the smartest person in the room. It's not uncommon, for us to be the smartest person in the room. But when it comes to this business stuff, that's different. That's a whole different animal. And certainly the imposter syndrome pops up pretty easily.
Can you describe what you mean by that?
Yeah, imposter syndrome is the feeling that someone's going to find you out. Like, somebody suddenly will know things aren't going as well as they appear to be on the front. Or, you could get let's just take this back. So, maybe not in your business world, but say in your corporate job, you got hired for a new position, or you're starting to work in a new company, and it's a big prestigious position, and you're afraid you're going to fail. They're going to find out you're not as good as they think you are, and it's not going to turn out so well. And imposter syndrome almost exclusively creeps up for people who are high achievers, because otherwise it doesn't, there isn't that disconnect between what you know and your own psychological perception of yourself. So I think that, it's not something that's as common anywhere, but with people who are highly educated and aim high.
Yeah. So this is interesting. So inherently, your stuff, and other people recognize your stuff. But there's some sort of disconnect internally where it's like, I know my stuff, but I don't know. Am I as good as they think I am? I mean, have you guys
and what if I fail? Like, I mean, because when you fail down here, you scrape your knee. When you fail up here, that's the fall of Icarus, right? It's a fall from a high position. And if you fall, and failure means really big things. So once this starts creeping up, it can be really hard to start taking risks, because the stakes are high. I mean, at this point, it's not just you failing and okay, what are you going to do? You don't go back to a job that's like Target. Like, that's not an option. I mean, it could mean that you're ruining your reputation. It could be a perception that you're not actually good at what you do. I mean, so it can psychologically have big effects, and financially, it could also have a pretty big effect, because you are aiming high, and success is big, but it also is a big risk too.
Yeah. So there are a lot of things to unpack here. So let's talk about first, inherently, being that person that has worked really hard in everything that I've done, and I don't do it for accolades. I do it just because inherently, like, I think it's the right thing to do. Like, I was taught,
because in your mind, there is not really another option.
Right.
It's do a good job or don't do it.
I mean, guys, have you felt any of this? Please let us know if or are you just,
we might be the only ones.
Yeah. Or are you just observing them like, wow, look at those people on the other side? I hope not. I'm pretty sure that there are folks
Yeah,
that are listening.
I think we're preaching to the choir. That's my expectation is we're probably preaching to the choir.
Yeah.
And like, please give me a thumbs up or give me a wave or that's me if you've ever felt like the smartest person in the room.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Or I'm going to throw another, or when you started your business, people were like, oh my gosh, you're going to be amazing. Oh, of
yeah.
course. You've succeeded in so many different things, man. This is going to be awesome. And you're like, yay. Oh crap. Like I can't fail this. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
Everybody's watching now.
yeah. It's like you've created this life streak. The difference.
Live stream. Oh my gosh, I love that. I think I might need to borrow that.
Yeah. And but what happens is it's very interesting that in all of that like traditional world, and I'm going to say traditional because the entrepreneurial world is like totally different, guys.
Yeah.
It truly is like
uncharted territory.
Yeah. And so what happens is we have succeeded within structures, right? So I was a bus girl. I knew like, what does a good bus girl do? Now, I will say I was probably I am a visionary type person. I didn't realize that when I was like 18, 17 or whatever, or 16. But I was always thinking like, well, how could I be a better bus girl, even though they didn't define that? You know what I mean?
Right.
So and you guys would probably be that way too, and saying, well, okay, well, a great job is this, but then I'd like to add layers.
Right. You want the extra credit. Yeah. You want the bonus gold stars, right? You want, and while you said that you're not going for the accolades, typically speaking, this personality type is looking for someone to notice. Like you would rather people just notice that you're doing a great job than necessarily be like, hey, I'm doing a great job.
Right.
You want to, like if we do go back to that school example, you wanted that teacher to say, well, we should be following Wanda's example. She went over and above. That's what would be
or it could be parent. Right? It could be like, I just really want my dad to know that I did a really good job. My mom to know that I did a really good job. Like there is some sort of like a recognition from like, I could definitely.
Especially a recognition from somebody who is in like that mentor role. So you mentioned parents, teachers, supervisors. It's not so much that you want your peers to say, wow, you're doing a great job, but you want somebody who has been there and been successful to notice and to recognize you.
This is some like deep psychology. I'm telling you, but it's really, really important to be aware of that, because I'm going to repeat that in all of those situations, there's usually some sort of example, metric, guideline as to what success looks like.
Right. And that's key, because you're great at taking that recipe and making it better, adding the whipped cream and cherry on top. Right. And, but without the recipe, without the map, it's really hard to know if you're actually doing a good job. It's really hard to know if you're making it. And so you start relying on other measurements, which often lead to you looking to the people around you. And the people around you in the entrepreneurial space aren't necessarily a good measure, because one, you might look to somebody.
They're all struggling.
I know. Two things. You're either looking to somebody who's farther along than you are and comparing and expecting results that are unrealistic. And because you tend to aim high, like, of course you would go with the most unrealistic result and beat yourself up when you don't get there.
Fine, Nettie. I'm like, geez.
I'm not speaking to you, Wanda. This isn't for you.
I'm gonna need like a tissue after this.
So I've got this. Hold on. I've got this up here. Momentum Live is one of the events that I host. It's actually coming up soon, so I'm excited about that. But there are always tissues. We know we need them when we start getting into this deep stuff. But the other thing that you might do is you might be comparing yourself to others in your space. And as Wanda said, it could be that They are not as far along as they appear to be. So you've got these two examples, and neither of them are reflective of what would be realistic and a good direction for you in your business.
Yeah.
And so often, because we're learners, we grab a book, we go to a class, we go to a course, we do something along those lines, we follow the expert, quote unquote,
Mhm.
and we get lackluster results, even if we follow it to a T, because they got those results because it was their path, not your path. So the
Yeah.
example that I like to bring up is Southwest. Southwest as an airline has been doing really well. They have been, they kind of broke the mold with how you did air travel. And they've been successful because of it. There have been other airlines that said, Southwest did it, we can do it too. And so they tried to follow Southwest's footsteps. And
Mm.
they did all the things that Southwest did, and they didn't have the same results. And the reason is they're not Southwest. Like,
Right.
that's
Yeah.
it. I mean, there's nothing more to it than they aren't actually Southwest. They aren't Southwest's, managers, visionaries, implementers. They could do every single thing the same way and not get the same result because they're not Southwest. So
Yeah.
following somebody else's path is never going to get you the results that you want. And yet I'm saying this fully knowing that there is a way to create the recipe, to create the map that you can follow and be successful. And
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Well,
so
I think what's important to recognize is that in the beginning, middle, end. I mean, it's a constant thing of really understanding what your goals and objectives are for your business, and what is your measure of success. That's what's important too, right? There have been instances where it's like, oh, okay, well, if I did this, then I could easily be a 7-figure company and blah blah blah. But that's not my desire. Like I desire that, and
right.
I have a desire for impact, or for this type of relationship with my clients, or for this type of home life. For example, I have a desire to homeschool my children, which like Nettie.
My eyebrows just went up. Sorry.
Yeah. Like,
Okay.
like at a certain point of your life, you were like, okay, it's important for me to run my business and homeschool my children.
Yeah.
That's like a completely different, like, organizational structure. Like, everything has to be organized differently to be able to
Yes.
support that.
Yeah, absolutely.
How the hell did you do that anyway? I don't like, tell me in
There-
one word. How did you do it?
Drugs? No. I will say that homeschooling and running a business is an amazing thing. And there were some great things that came out of that experience. But I am glad for the school structure that we have set up now. I know a number of families that have done it, and one comes to mind that has done it superbly, right? But it is a difficult path to put those two things together.
Yeah, yeah. But so the point is that one of the most important things is to start out understanding what does success look like for
Right. And
you.
to start out, and as you said, beginning, middle, and end, it's a daily question of where are you going? What are you creating? What are you envisioning? Because that's going to shift. And actually, that can be yet another problem or challenge for our high achiever set, that your vision will change, and that's okay. It's okay if you don't reach the goals that you've set for yourself, which can be a really tough pill to swallow, really tough.
Yeah.
And yet it's necessary. It's necessary to shift into a growth mindset. Carol Dweck in her book Mindset talks about the difference between a growth mindset and a fixed mindset. And the growth mindset is appreciating the journey. It's appreciating the successes along the way. It's seeing every step as a learning opportunity and a place, and it will actually get you farther. The fixed mindset is focused only on the outcome. And it also has a belief, or, there's a belief in your mind with a fixed mindset that that you're born innately with a certain set of skills. And if you have that belief and you don't succeed, then there's no other room for you to go in.
Right. If you have that fixed
to go
mindset, it's like, oh, I guess I don't have it. Like that's
right. Exactly. And that's not true. Like it's completely false. 100% false. You might not become an Olympic champion, right? But that doesn't mean that you can't work hard and achieve a certain level of success, in what you're doing. And that's the same in your business. So maybe you don't become a world-known brand like Apple, but Steve Jobs, when he started, didn't have the vision of Apple that he had when he passed away, right? It was different. It shifted along the way. And that's really, really important. You have to be willing to adjust your vision as you go. So your vision on day one is the vision that's going to take you basically to day 2. I know.
And that's hard.
2000. And that's a big shift.
Yeah. And that's a difficult thing. I think it's a difficult thing for anyone, but for a higher achiever kind of mindset personality, it's like we
got to know what we're creating.
Yeah. It's like you're changing the rules on me. Like if I had these rules, then I know that I could be this, but then now you're changing the rules, but guess what? It's me that's changing the rules, but then you get frustrated and you get into this cycle of like, why am I changing the rules? And it's really intriguing. I know that we're going to get into this even more deeply. I am, there's so much to this. And so I do want to bring up that a lot of these principles that we're going to be diving into, if you have to hop off for any reason, I don't want you to miss this really awesome guide that Nettie put together. It's how to succeed in business, but the proven path to success for high achievers. All right.
Oh, that's pretty.
This is right. So this piece, man, it's hot. It's like and there's an awesome calf shot there. Look at that. Look at her calves. Woo! No.
That's exactly why I made this. You can look at
the whole thing was just to we may as well just put her calves right there. No. No,
I love you, Wanda.
I love you too. This is just like a really excellent piece just to kind of summarize these principles that you've kind of unveiled over time and working with large organizations, high achieving individuals. If you are, since this is going to become a podcast, audio only podcast as well in the future. So I'm going to talk about what we're showing here on the screen. I want you to text FREEDOM, FREEDOM to 411321 to receive this amazing guide on how to succeed in business that is specifically targeted for high achievers. You're going to get that, and you have the opportunity to get additional success resources that are targeted for high achievers, which is really fantastic. Nettie worked really, really hard on this. So text FREEDOM to 411321. And if you're listening to this internationally, you could also text FREEDOM as the message to the phone number +1 909 741 1321. All right. So the number's +1 909 741 1321. The message is FREEDOM. And in all of those cases, it'll ask you for your email address. This is a catchword, by the way. I am the inventor of catchwords. And the second reveal is that Nettie is an official client. She's a pro client of
I do know that.
Yeah, you knew that. I was like, yeah, you know that. But in many of these episodes, we have a standard catchword for Rocket Fuel, which would be RF dash whatever the episode number is. But because you are a client, you have your very own catchword, right?
Do.
Mm-hmm. And she gets to use this everywhere she goes.
I do. And I'm so excited. I love sharing this as a resource. I love that I I can let people know that it's a way to really leverage your time and energy to have an option like this to share with people who might be interested in learning a little bit more about what you do and how you do it, and to be able to provide phenomenal resources. Because the other thing that I know about high achievers is that we do like to go above and beyond, and we don't want to give crappy stuff out. So I aligned with Catch because I wanted to be able to provide high quality resources to the people that I was connecting with.
Thank you. Yeah, and we love supporting you. So you worked really, really hard on putting this piece together. And what I'll say is this is just like the tip of the iceberg, right? Because you actually wrote like an ebook about this, and it was so difficult for you to like boil this down. So tell us about how you got here, understanding high achiever mentality, and ultimately like rolling this into this program that you have called Momentum.
Yeah. So my path started way back. In 2004, I was newly moved to our new home in Maryland, and I was looking for something to do. And so I thought, oh, you know what? I'm not going to go back to corporate because we're going to start a family. So I'll do something easier. I'll start my own company.
Yeah. Easier. Yeah.
The meme had not been created yet that said, I'll work 80 hours a week just so I don't have to work 40 hours a week. But it definitely described the mindset, right? That like we go into business for ourselves thinking it's going to give us all this freedom.
Yeah.
That's why the catchword. And it doesn't. We become just strapped to our business, and unable to step away from it. So,
yeah.
So the business I created was as a professional organizer. I created an agency where I served chronically disorganized people, homes, families, small businesses, folks that had kind of additional reasons for why staying organized was challenging, like ADHD, OCD, PTSD, traumatic brain injury, anxiety, depression, any of those things that really affected your mind. And that's how and why you are having a challenge in your space. And I did that for years. I trained people. They've gone on, some of those folks that I've trained have gone on to start their own companies, which I'm super excited about and happy to see that legacy continue. Yeah. And then I looked at what I was doing. I was like, you know what? If we can take a person who is in a hoarded household and help them create an environment that feels good to them, that helps them reach their goals, then we can take those same principles about project management and goal setting and vision and put them into the entrepreneurial space. And that's what we did.
Whoa. Yeah. Because in a way we have like idea hoarding and task hoarding, you know what I mean? It's just like the clutter that is in our spaces. We try and move forward. I could see that. That's really, really interesting. And then so you look at the entrepreneur and you see that like all of these principles start applying. And then me knowing you, I started seeing and witnessing you hone in on this high achiever. Like it was kind of like there, and then you started like refining. And what's interesting, and guys, this is kind of a lesson in niching your business, right? As you started refining, it became more and more clear to the people that were totally aligned with what you were saying.
Absolutely.
And then your business started exploding, even though you were, and we all have
getting smaller and tighter and closer. Yeah, absolutely.
Is that nuts?
No, it's not nuts. It makes so much sense.
It's a proven path, but
it is part of the proven path to get super clear on who you serve and how you serve them. That is one of the steps. And it's a step, like you're going to be asked that question everywhere you go. You have to know who you serve and how you serve them. But when I was in organizing, I knew exactly who I served and how I served them. Organizers serve all sorts of different kinds of clients. And the one thing that I would say to new organizers coming on the scene was get clear, pick a niche and focus on that. And our niche was chronically disorganized households. And we became the go-to resource. In fact, people would call all the way from 3 to 4 hours away to work with our company because
Wow.
we were, trained and had the resources and would come in and be able to solve their challenges. So, there were times that I flew to clients because there wasn't somebody in their particular area and worked with them. So 3 hours, 3 hours wasn't actually the farthest.
Wow.
But that was because we niched down to a specific group of people so that we could become known as the people to call when you had this specific problem.
Mhm.
And originally, when I started to niche down to, in this iteration, working with entrepreneurs, working with parent entrepreneurs, because I thought that was the niche market.
Right.
And you remember this path, right?
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
I kept rejecting like the mompreneur mindset. It didn't fit. It didn't fit with how if anybody's on here who's like, I'm not a mompreneur, I know you're not. People would
Mhm.
say like, oh, you should claim parentpreneur. I'm like, I have no desire to make words up in that particular way. It just doesn't resonate with me or my brand.
Mhm.
But what I realized is that these same folks who were becoming parents, along their life journey, it was because that was part of the recipe for success.
Mhm.
It wasn't that all my entrepreneurs were parents. It was that all my entrepreneurs that I was working with were following the path that they had seen, an example of, that they felt like was the path to success. It was go to
Mhm.
school, do well, get your job, do well, meet somebody, have
Yeah.
a great relationship, buy the house, have a dog, a cat, and 2.5 kids, right? Or
Well,
whatever
so
that
what
number.
we're constantly kind of talking about here is reverting back to this, like, these structure, this expectation,
Mhm.
like this set framework that helped us define success. And the beauty of becoming an entrepreneur is that you actually get to choose what success means for you. That's the freedom of
Mhm.
entrepreneurialism. But what happens is I know that I didn't know that as well. It's like conceptually, it was like, but
Right.
then like even in my corporate environment, I had ways to communicate it. It's like, oh, here's the strategic plan template.
Right.
Like, fill out your strategic template so that you know that you're not like missing out on critical things, right? But
Right.
from an entrepreneurial perspective, I was like, okay, they had, and I say they had long, long ago because it's been over 15 years. Sure, a business plan,
Mhm.
right? But I will say that most definitely, like, coaches, advisors on the entrepreneurial front were not really as common. I don't know if it was because I wasn't finding them or they just weren't as common. And you obviously you started in 2004. Did you find that as well? That it's just the idea of a coach and advisor in entrepreneurialism wasn't really like as big a thing.
I think there was probably less awareness around it. There was less. I think there was less consistency in the options and on what was available for training. And ICF existed. At that point in time, which is the International Coaching Federation, that sets the guidelines for coaching in all kinds of forms. It's really the go-to. But these things existed, but I do think the awareness around them was less. And I think that there's been this explosion. Probably you could tie it to Facebook, where people said, oh my gosh, I can be a coach. I can hang out this shingle. I can find people easily. I don't even have to be trained. I can
It is
go and
true, right?
just say that I'm a coach. And so you had this explosion, which has been a bit, I think, of a detriment to the industry, because, it's hard to really know, are you working with a coach that has the training and expertise to be effective, or are you working with someone who calls themselves a coach and doesn't necessarily have that background. But I do
Yeah.
think that social media has helped build this particular industry because people could see examples and use the internet marketing and stuff to show. And folks have, they have
Yeah.
shown, oh, do this and you'll get this result. That doesn't necessarily, I just want to differentiate here. That's not necessarily what a coach does. A coach is really working with you specifically to help you uncover your innate understanding, your innate knowledge, whereas somebody who's showing you how they were successful is a consultant, and
Right.
they're different.
That's
Just,
important.
yeah.
It's important to understand. Yeah,
Mhm.
I always say to my clients, I'm like, okay, I'm not a coach, because the coaching process is there's a nuance, and obviously if you're certified in that method, you're pulling the answers out of your clients.
Right.
Obviously you have a framework, but you're basically saying, like you say, you innately have that in you. And then from my perspective, I'm providing advice and consultation based on
Right.
experience and results. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And I like to blend it. Like I like to, to take both and kind of put them together. But there will be times where I'll say, I'm putting on my consulting hat, or I'm putting on my advising hat, or I'm putting on my coaching hat, because I want, the person on the other side of that conversation to know and understand where this information is coming from.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is really important as well, and just kind of recognizing that when we're an entrepreneur, we don't have accountability to anybody but ourselves, right? So going back to the structure,
I
like
know,
we
it just
knew.
keeps coming back to that shock. I don't understand why that's happening.
Darn, right? Yeah. And like, and one of our viewers said, yeah, it's the wild, wild west, right? And so we have this impression that entrepreneurialism is like no structure, wow,
Yeah.
and it feels like that, versus when we had a
And I'm
job,
going
there
to
was
throw
structure.
another wrench in the works.
Uh-oh.
It's not unusual for entrepreneurs to perhaps tend toward an ADHD brain pattern.
It's not unusual to be a little ADD.
So what this means is, you are innately a little bit more of a risk taker, right?
Mm.
But you're also constantly generating ideas, and in your mind you're trying to understand and decide, like, is this worth following? Should I go down this path? So with lots of options in front of you and the ability to create anything, decision making can be a huge barrier to success, just because having so many choices can make it really difficult to make decisions, and that can be a place where you just get stuck. Like, I don't know which way I should move forward. Which one's going to be the best path? And oftentimes in this moment, we stop relying on our own innate knowledge and understanding and start looking to others to help solve the problems in front of us. And so we might give away our power and ownership of what we're creating, because we think that this coaching program or this advisor or this consultant is going to tell us what to do and how to do it and how to be successful. And, the reality is we actually know, if we trust our gut. Hey, Brian. True.
He says that is so true.
But we get into this decision-making lock, basically brain lock, and it freezes us. So speaking from experience, there was a point in my entrepreneurial journey where I'm like, oh, they must know better than me. So I spent years, buying programs, buying books, reading. And while some of that knowledge has been amazing, that I catalog it and I'm like, okay, this is what I'm going to do when I'm doing marketing. This is what I'm going to do, when I want to talk about this productivity concept. But I did give away my power to the point where I had to say, okay, full stop. I'm going to start listening to myself and the ideas that I have, because they've brought me this far. I am really great at what I do. I do have a lot of innate knowledge. I can work from that first, and then bring in the people that have the piece of information that you need not just handing it all to them and saying, fix it for me.
Yeah. Well, so what's really important is to have that path, to have that vision, to have those goals set, and then you are still acquiring that support, right? Because I'm a big fan of actually staying in your lane and bringing in the experts. But what happens is you will lose power. You will feel like you're being steered in one direction and another direction because you didn't take the time to establish your areas of focus, what's important to you, all of this stuff, right?
Right.
And then there's this frustration that you feel like, oh, well, I joined XYZ's program and they pulled me that way, and then it
didn't work, right?
And it didn't work, right? So it's this blaming.
This person might not be a good, coach or consultant because it didn't work for me. Well, honestly, they're probably a great coach or consultant, and
yeah, you were rudderless at that point, so you just went with the flow of where everybody else. And now I will say that, in retrospect, hey, that's okay. It happens to a lot of people, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's happened to me as well, and I have found that as part of the process, it allows me to know what I do want and what I don't want. It's kind of like when you're dating a lot of people, right? You're like, if you date a lot, then you realize like, ooh, I don't like that, or ooh, I want more of that. Now I just want to, right? So that's why it's important to participate in communities and masterminds and such, and then to actually have that that vision of what it is that you desire, and so I found it as the one who calls themselves the nerdy girl entrepreneur, right? I
love that title.
Yeah. Like, because I felt like I was plagued, I'm like, okay, I'm nerd. And as a nerd, then I feel like, oh, I can figure it all this out by myself, or why haven't I succeeded yet? And all this stuff. And you were very intriguing to me in the sense that you clearly were a nerd yourself. Right? So I was like, man, she really knows her stuff. I understand logically where she's coming from. I understand now that there's a difference between succeeding within a structure and then jumping out and realizing like, I'm not succeeding because I don't even know how I'm measuring success. What is it that I want? And then recognizing that I didn't have a boss to go to check in, to say like, oh, you said that you wanted to do that last month.
Right.
Did you do it? So tell me more. I'm leaking all these aspects of what you bring to the table, but describe like how you formulated your momentum program and what really is that about?
Right. Well, it initially was just accountability. Like when it first started, it was just an opportunity. What I saw in the marketplace was that there were a lot of coaches who would give, guidance and then leave people for a month or 3 months to implement that guidance. And what would happen is, they would try, the participants would try, but they would kind of fail because there was a lot of space in between the delivery of the task, this go do this thing, and the next time that
it's like,
yeah. And what would happen is, this, like the night before you're supposed to check in, you're making up a month's worth of work, right?
No, I've never done that.
It's not me either. I don't know what you're talking about.
It must be them. Our listeners, maybe, but not me.
No. So he's going to pop up with another comment here. I'm just waiting. So that was it. It was solving that problem, seeing, I could come in and I could help remind you, this is where you said you were going. This is what you said you were doing. This is the next step that you said was important to take. And so that's how it started. And so from there, it was like, well, they need to make the plan first. Okay. So we added making the plan, and then it was being accountable to that plan. And then it was like, well, everybody's got something to contribute. So let's have a time where people can come together and kind of suss out their plans together. And so that was added. Well, sometimes you run into a roadblock and you need a little more support to kind of navigate your way around this. And by this point, I had a good amount of coaching training under me. So I'm full disclosure, I am not a certified coach. I have gone through about 2 years of coaching training and leadership training, but I have not applied for my certification.
Oh, she should.
I
You'd be
know.
like,
I know.
to create your own certification.
I'm good at following the path on this one, but I like the vetted system that says yes, you have gone through these steps. But just knowing that there was more that person needed support on, so that was added, and it's evolved. Just looking at that full structure of what does a person need to succeed, and how can we create that container to operate in, such that there are some bounds to it, and teach folks then how to create the container for themselves. So, first providing that structure and then helping them create the structure within what they're doing to be able to move forward. So my hope, is that that somebody doesn't need me forever. My hope is that
I need you forever.
I'm happy to work with you as long as you want. But the idea is that, that you have the ability to create this system, and maybe I am part of that system, but we do go through those steps. I mean, at this point, even without me, I do think you're probably thinking about, what do I need to do today? What do I need to focus on today? And there are certain thought processes that you're going through. I mean, even you've said on a monthly basis, if you don't pause to do that reflection and reset, that it's difficult to stay on track. That's something that you've taken in internally after the time that we've been working together.
So there's several things that are important here. First of all, reflecting back on the corporate environment, we had, monthly updates and check-ins with the executives, the high-level executives. We had, quarterly reports. We established metrics, and then we have to report back as all of these things. And we understand that we should be doing this for ourselves, but if it doesn't happen, nobody says anything because we're the boss, right? So I saw that and I said, look, it's not that I don't know. And this is what's really, really important. It's not that we don't understand these principles. When they're unveiled to us, we're like, yeah, totally logical, right? To me, the biggest thing was recognizing that it's totally normal for me to not be able to hold myself accountable for certain things. We can make a crap load of excuses, right? It's like, oh, but my kids or whatever, right? There are tons of excuses as to why we didn't create. But guess what? If we were working for somebody, we wouldn't be able to say, oh, well, you said I agreed to doing this, and then I kind of
There's nothing wrong with accountability. I mean, look at a finance department, right? There's always the audit. There's always an auditor. And this is it. Like having that, if you're signing checks, there's someone double checking. Goodness gracious, I got to tell you what I did. So we had work done on the basement, and I wrote the check and gave it to the contractor. I didn't double check it, and I didn't have my husband check the check. This is why financial departments have this checks and balances, right? And I wrote on the check that the check was supposed to be for $20,000, and I wrote on the check 20 and forgot to write the 1,000 part. The correct amount was in the numbers, but not in the written out words.
Right.
And his bank took it, and my bank withdrew $20. So it all ended up like I had to reissue the check. It was a little bit of a hullabaloo, but that's why you need checks and balances. And so you're going to have checks and balances that you set up within your company, but there's always still that, like, you're going for big goals, and the people that are around you are there to help you continue to operate, but you've got to have a place, a container where you can talk about the vision that we set out discussing earlier, in this conversation, and then how are you going to get there, and then let's stay accountable to doing that. And if you decide to switch directions, which is fine, because we talked about the need to shift and change, to have that space to say, is it a good choice right now for me to make this shift? Should I go for this opportunity? And just constantly be reevaluating the direction that you're going in. That's not something that you do with your employees.
Right.
If you do that, what happens is the balance tips. And so now you're taking the guidance and direction from your employees. Well, that wasn't what you hired them for. And it can be really super confusing. And then
but also, who is the one that's supposed to be driving the goal?
Right. No one's driving. No one's driving. Right.
Yeah.
Your employees are going to make sure that you and everyone there stays safe.
Yeah.
But they're not going to help you make sure that you reach the big stuff. It's just not their job. And that's fine, because if don't put that on them, it becomes a really big burden. But you do have to have that place where you're checking in, you're staying accountable, you're checking on the big vision, you're going through that process and consistently. And if you don't, it was interesting. I had somebody today, like I said, Momentum Live's coming up, and I don't think she quite understood what we do, because she said, "Oh, my business is more mature than what you work with." And I was
and you're like, actually,
I think maybe my marketing needs to shift. That's what I was thinking in my mind. I'm like,
well, so that's fair to talk about. Is there a minimum requirement, for you? Not in the sense of being elitist, but do you feel like, okay, well, people have to have been in business for a certain amount of years or earn a certain amount of revenue in order for them to actually appreciate and understand what it is that you're providing them?
It does help. Because there are certain things that when you're starting out in business, you have to overcome certain hurdles. You have to have experienced certain things. You have to have your first client. You have to have sold your first high ticket program, process, service, sale. Like, you have to be comfortable with talking about big numbers, because otherwise what we do and what we talk about is going to seem outside of the realm of possibility. And you're going to get stuck just in the visioning. So if you're willing to go there and think big, and you have already sold something of significance, that you have the ability to sell something of significance, that's moving in the right direction. So there are some people who come out of the gates with this, and typically that happens if you've already been working in a position where you're working with this kind of size of business, right?
Right.
That you can come out and shift from one to another. You could have had a very successful other entrepreneurial venture. Either that didn't continue, or you sold it, and then, shifting to this that's fine. But typically there needs to have been that like laying of the foundation before we jump into something like this kind of support.
Yeah. And it makes have to have it's unfortunate, because I wish that we could say, well, we're trying to keep you from making those mistakes, right? But just as you may with your children, right? You say, oh, but I'm trying to teach you this. And then sometimes, like, they just unfortunately have to experience it, because then they will appreciate the guidance that you're trying to provide.
And realistically, there are a lot of coaches that are startup coaches. There are a lot of startup coaches. Start there. And if that's where you are, start with a startup coach. And I do highly recommend that you have a coach all along the way. But once your vision is bigger than that, once you've hit that first 6 figures, or once you've developed that high ticket program, or offering, then we can talk. But we definitely need to start with startup kinds of things, because the reality is you have to go through that process. You have to learn to roll over, and then sit, and then crawl, and it's all along the way. So
And so what's really important is, for me, I know that you said, at some point, you may not need me anymore. And the reason why I push back on it is because unless I create somebody within my organization who, by the way, would be my employee, who would be in a position to hold me accountable for certain things, it's kind of
then it gets a little dicey.
It gets a little weird. And I have been fortunate to have executive assistants who are really ballsy gals, or I don't know.
Vagina-y gals?
I was like golden ovary gals. I don't know, Brad.
What isn't it? It's Betty White, right?
Sorry.
She said that. She's like, I don't want to have balls. I want to have a vagina. That thing. And then I don't remember the whole thing, but yeah.
You guys hung on, and you see the V word came up. But anyway, but the point is, it was great for them to be able to have the confidence to kind of say, hey, Wanda, this and that. But it's not just about checking with my goals. I think if they were my employee, inherently, if I push back, I may push back in a different way, right? But they're also not speaking from experience of serving a whole bunch of other companies, right? And so Brian just caught up with what we just said. But
like, oh dear God, here we go.
There's something about like knowing that you're speaking to somebody that has been working with so many different organizations that have very probably have been in that situation, as well. So from my perspective, I see you as a critical foundational partner in the growth of your business, because there's a little bit of a weight that's lifted in realizing, like, I told somebody what I want to do. It makes sense. It makes logical sense. And now I don't have to beat myself up over it. Nettie's going to check in. Nettie and her team.
I'm going to beat you up over it.
Yeah,
no, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
I'm going to check in with you. But the other part of that is you want somebody also that you can come to and say, I'm afraid of doing this.
Yeah.
Or this isn't going well, or, I'm really challenged in this particular space. And that is just not a conversation to have with your employees.
Exactly.
Well, we do want to bring the big stuff. We don't, and it's okay. Like, that's honestly the way it should be. And if you look around, the most successful companies, the most successful CEOs have a cohort of peers where they can bring that kind of information. And that's why part of momentum is having that cohort of peers that you can come out and openly say, this is what's working, or we're aiming for 1,000, people by the end of the year, or, oh my gosh, on the flip side of that, all my employees quit, or, I don't know what to do. We were sued, and then have that group of people, or have that person that can help you navigate that difficulty.
Yeah, no, it's huge, and it's been of great value to me as well. So, I mean, definitely, if you guys have questions along the way, throw them out. I think we've really talked a lot about, let's say, I would say probably a large percentage of entrepreneurs are high achievers anyway.
Oh, right. I don't know. I think you probably you are speaking of that because you have surrounded yourself with other like-minded entrepreneurs.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. All right. So that's important. It's important to understand. And actually, that's the value. It's the value of connecting with like-minded people. They understand how you work, and having a like-minded advisor, coach, consultant, right? That can understand that and help you get unstuck along the way. But this is the consistency in planning, and the holding me accountable, or the checking in on, like, okay, you said you're going to do this, because there are so many things in a 30-day period. Like, I could have said, these 4 things are really important to me. I want to see 30 days from now, these things happen. And then it's like squirrel. Woo! I mean, it could be a fire alarm that happened, a fire that I have to put out, or it could be just a really super exciting new idea that I have and I
Mm-hmm.
forgot
Oh yeah.
and I forgot that I said something else was really important. So yeah, it's extremely valuable. Now you mentioned your Momentum Live program,
Right.
and I know that as a podcast, as a show, that this is evergreen. But for those of you that are listening, now you do have these several times a year, right?
I do. So what's coming up right now is
I'm gonna
we
write.
are having Momentum Live in person.
Okay.
But that event is full. And that event actually does happen twice a year. So the next one's coming up in October. But we are also having Momentum Live virtual. And this is, we're doing things a little differently. I'm so freaking excited about this virtual offering. We just booked a comedian to kick us off at the start of the event, which is so fun. You can bring your pets to the to the comic show and introduce them. I'm so excited. I can't wait. I hope this speaks to you. I hope you're pet people, because we're going to be doing it. Dogs, cats, gerbils, whatever. But we have
So
so
now
much
is
fun
the
stuff.
live event and the virtual event going on at the same time, or they're two different?
No, they're two totally different things, because one thing that I know, having done this a couple times now, is that what you need to show up to prepare to show up for a virtual event is different than what you need to prepare to show up for a in-person event. And in order that I can make sure that everyone has an amazing experience,
Yeah.
that you have the breakthroughs that are expected and commonplace at this event, that you're able to connect with your cohort, you get to know people, network, mastermind. I can't do that with two different platforms.
Right.
But you can check it out. And we'll have, if you go to nettieowens.com.
Okay. I was going to say, where can folks go?
Yeah, they can, all the information for anything that's going on, I try and link to this website. But if you ever have any questions, you can also just reach out to me, and I'd be happy to answer those. So that's all available on nettieowens.com.
And that's NETTIEOWENS.com for those of you that are listening, NettieOwens.com. And then of course you can always, want to make sure that folks are served immediately. So we like just skimmed across the surface of these principles. Like the objective here of this interview is to kind of help people understand, like, foundationally how and why being a high achiever could I don't want to say be a detriment, but it's just a different perspective that it's important to be aware of, and to try and like thwart some of the issues that may.
Well, I think it's important to be aware of how you're wired. Like,
yes.
And why, and you had said, aren't most entrepreneurs high achievers? No, not necessarily. And so knowing that, as you're looking at resources, you can understand why this particular resource isn't resonating with you, and why you're, why you desire so much to go back to a 40-hour work week where somebody was telling you what to do. Like, all of those kinds of things tend to come more with this high achiever mindset than for another personality type. And so it is important to know that. But I will let you continue on.
Yeah. No, well, I just want to make sure, especially for those that are listening, to make sure if you're in the US, you can put in the number 411321, and the message would be freedom. FREEDOM, right? So you're going to text freedom to 411321. Or if you're listening internationally, the number would be +1. You have to do the plus, I found. +1 909 741 1321. And once again, the message is freedom. We'll ask you for your email address. If you've never used the Catchword service, if you have, then we won't ask you because we got your info already. But this guy that Nettie really worked very hard to put together is just the beginning. But if any of this resonates with you, I think you should really start looking at some of this information that she's put together, and just learn more about Nettie. What I love is, this piece is purely educational. This is
absolutely
like gold,
right.
just to get access to. And I feel like it just cracks open your mind to realize that there are principles. There is a proven path. That's your main message in this piece. There is a proven path to success. And if we feel like it is the wild, wild west, if we feel rudderless, if we feel like, oh, why did I succeed there in that world and not in this world? Like that, like we feel like there's a difference in the world.
Mhm.
It's interesting that that with structure we can realize, no, actually it's not horribly different. When it comes to actually mapping out a pathway to success. I mean, what do you think? Do I have that right there? Am I fairly?
No, I have a class that I used to teach many moons ago called the Framework of Productivity. And it identified really like the structures that are necessary. And within that, there's so much ability to thrive and be creative and reach your goals. When you don't have that structure, that container to build from, then it's hard and so hard that it often won't come to fruition, or will come to fruition so slowly that you fizzle out, you burn out. Actually, something we didn't talk about today was just how important what we're talking about is to you being a whole and healthy person. You do not have to sacrifice yourself to your
Ooh.
company. I mean, that could be another whole conversation, but I don't want to get into it. These principles will help you create that structure so you don't have to sacrifice yourself to your company. That's why it's called freedom. You can create the freedom for yourself in your business without losing yourself in the process.
Yeah, it's not a badge of courage, success, or whatever to say, oh, I am so busy that I can't do anything. And I remember, and I even if I hear myself now, it's like, I'm too busy to do this thing with my family. I'm too busy to connect with my friends. And then it's like, you run a successful business, but is it really that successful where it has you in shackles, or are you choosing that?
Right. And you could be.
Yeah, perhaps you are choosing that, but if you're feeling imprisoned by your business, guess who started that business? Guess who structured that business? You have the opportunity to change that.
Yeah.
And it's really important to understand that you have the power to create this freedom for yourself. But I think when you mentioned self-care and such, it's so important for us to realize that, from the outside, it's not, doesn't really sound like you're that successful when you're like always like beaten to the ground. And
Right.
I've been there, and I find myself sometimes I do get there, and you're there to kind of help me understand like what is really important, or remember you had mentioned these tools really have worked well for you in the past and such. And because sometimes you feel like, I'm helpless. This
Well, and
sucks.
it's also important to remember that there is a natural ebb and flow, that you naturally have more energy at certain times, less energy at others. And that could be within the day, within the month, within the quarter. You might have a lot of energy that you put into a launch. I'm putting a lot of energy right now into Momentum Live. I have 2 weeks blocked off, and my entire team is like, they're actually holding me accountable to this,
Yes.
that I will not be available for 2 weeks after Momentum Live, because that ebb and flow has to happen. And again, if we go back to the entrepreneurial high achiever mindset, there's no room for that ebb and flow. It's go at your fastest pace at all times. And so
Yeah.
part of what we do is just help create that structure that allows you to exist without burning out.
Yeah, that's super important. Oh, what I forgot to mention too is when you text freedom to 411-321, you have special access to Nettie's calendar. So
You
you can
do. Actually, I
actually
made
like,
something just for you.
yeah, like you could actually just be like, look, I need to talk. I need to talk.
You could
And
text this number and not read the guide, which I wouldn't recommend because it's a good
'cause-
guide. But
yeah,
should you choose that path, I
yeah,
understand. So many of the people that I work with at this moment feel so overwhelmed that the idea of even reading a few page document is kind of like, oh my gosh, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if I
Yeah.
can do this. But I did create a special appointment type just for you. That is a time we'll look at your success path. So what do you specifically need to do or be or create in order to be successful? And I'm happy to provide that to you.
That's
You
awesome.
know, if you text this number,
Yeah.
so that we can be in touch and you can grab a link to that. There's no other place where you can find that link. It's only available here.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. We special. We special. With that being said, I want to thank you so much, Nettie Owens, founder of Momentum, president of Sapari Solutions, all that jazz. Do you have any final advice, final words for our audience?
My final words are that you are absolutely amazing. You're doing the best you possibly can. You have what it takes to be successful, even if it doesn't feel like it right at the moment. And there are people like you out there that you can connect with to create a tribe around you that is just going to amplify everything that you're doing.
Yeah. Absolutely. Thank you so much. Guys, make sure you stay connected to Rocket Fuel. If you are an entrepreneur, an expert who loves to connect with other people that like
This is the place to be.
it's the place to be. So make sure to find us ROCK-IT Fuel on Facebook. Join our community because we love to support each other and I love to support your visibility goals. Okay. I would love to get to know you and feature you here on Rocket Fuel Expert Spotlight. We have a really awesome, we're just packed with awesome guests on Friday. So stay tuned for those announcements. Thank you so much. You have a great one, guys. Bye.